Maybe in the near future, if you see this man's life story on Netflix or Amazon Prime, don't be surprised. What happened to this man is a once-in-a-billion event, and you'll find yourself asking how it happened. He is Ethiopian, and his story will teach many people about the hardships of being a refugee. Mohammed Ademoga has recently been invited to major local shows to share his unimaginable stories. Mohammed's hardship began in 1992 when Ethiopia and Eritrea were at war. He represented his home country, Ethiopia, in the conflict. After the war cooled down 2 years later, he left his military life and went to Djibouti for a better life. After a few months, he traveled north and settled in Eritrea for 12 years. After that, he immigrated to Sudan, where he faced more hardships for another 4 years. Despite living in foreign countries as a refugee for a long time, Mohammed had no money to return to Ethiopia and build a life there. He decided to leave Africa and go to Europe, even though he had a long history of suffering with a broken hand. With the 3,000 Sudanese pounds left to his name, he started his journey to the Chad border. There, he imitated the locals' clothing and entered Chad with many other refugees. Luck was on their side when they found a vehicle to take them to Libya, allowing them to cross the treacherous desert. Now, they were in Libya, infamous for its refugee crisis. After a few days, they contacted a dealer who provided a small boat with gasoline and a GPS for navigation. They gave him all the money they had and left Africa, beginning their journey to Europe. Although the heat was unbearable, their hopes were high because they had finally reached what they had dreamed of for so long. Motivating each other was their only choice. There were 15 people on the boat, including a pregnant woman. The plan was to reach Malta at dawn the next morning, so they didn't eat or drink before leaving Libya. As night fell and the heat decreased, they felt relieved. Suddenly, a huge wave hit their boat, and they drifted off course. Using the GPS, they tried to regain their route, but none of them knew how to navigate the sea. Panic and arguments arose among them, but they eventually decided on a route and continued their journey. When dawn came, they found themselves heading east, where the sun was rising, meaning they had gone the wrong way. Mohammed, using his knowledge of Europe being to the west, took the GPS and directed them westward. For some time, everything was all right, but suddenly the GPS battery died, leaving them in the middle of the ocean without help. Amid the chaos, another catastrophe struck. The boat ran out of fuel. Now the 15 people lost hope, suffering from starvation and dehydration. The heat became unbearable, and most of them started panicking and crying. Their only option was to attract the attention of passing ships and helicopters. Numerous ships and helicopters passed by, but none stopped to help despite hearing their cries. After 5 days, they were on the verge of death due to hunger and thirst. On that day, 2 Ethiopian refugees could no longer bear the thirst and drank their urine and ocean water, dying shortly after. One by one, people began to die, and 5 of them threw themselves into the ocean, committing suicide. Amidst this catastrophe, Mohammed remembered his military training and resisted drinking ocean water. As more days passed, only 3 people remained on the boat, including Mohammed. Facing the dire situation, Mohammed proposed that to survive, they might need to consume the corpses left on the boat. While some might judge this action as disgusting, these 3 had not eaten or drunk for 11 days, and the heat was merciless. After they did the deed, the trio continued waiting and hoping for the best. But sadly, all of them died except Mohammed. To maintain his body's water during the daytime, Mohammed would dive into the ocean and return to the boat. Despite his efforts, his body was giving up to the brutal ocean. Accepting his fate, he lay on the boat, looking up at the sky, waiting for his demise. Miraculously, he heard helicopters approaching. After a few minutes, they sent down a rope and rescued him, the sole survivor. He received emergency treatment at a hospital in Malta, where most doctors expected him to die. But miraculously, he recovered completely. After leaving Malta, Mohammed now lives in France. preaching to young people in Africa not to immigrate to Europe through illegal means like he did. When people hear Muhammad's story, their first reaction is often disbelief, but there are many articles to prove his tale. Some people condemn him for eating a corpse, while others praise and advocate that God saved him to tell his story to the world. Now it's your turn. What would you do if you were in Muhammad's position? Tell us your thoughts in the comments.